Hey, government friends, Mr. Funk here. Just getting ready to continue our next note session. So we're going to continue with chapter one. So as you already know, that we've already done the three theories of power, and then we've completed types of government. But now we're going to talk about how do citizens participate in the American government. But as we do that, we got to jump forward and we got to identify a few things first. So the first thing we got to talk about, what is government? Right? So if we look at the definition of government, this is the institutions and processes through which public policies are made for society. So as you know, it comes in many different forms, as you just did the different types of government. But when we look at American government, the way our democracy is set up, right? So our institution, there's a separation of powers where we have an institution that makes the laws, an institution that executes the laws, and one that interprets the laws. Right? This is to make sure the government doesn't trample on the rights of the American citizens. So this definition of government leads us to two basic questions. One, who governs? And two, what should the government do? So as today when we jump into the theories, we're going to kind of look at who has the ear of the government, who has all the government's attention. So how does the government respond to the people? So, and then here comes that dirty P word, right? Politics, right? So when we talk about who has the ear of the government, is there too much of quote unquote politics being played? So what is politics? This is the process by which we select our government leaders and what policies these leaders produce, right? So who are they going to make policies for? Who's going to benefit? Who's not? All that, which from the guided reading, is going to lead to Laswell's definition. When we look at politics and government, who gets what, when, and how, that becomes the issue, right? So who is benefiting from the policy? Is it the population as a whole? Is it large companies? Is it small companies? Is it just one sector of the country? Is this happening geographically? So that's an issue that comes into play when we talk about politics and government. And so now let's jump into our three theories of democratic participation. Again, like I said before, who has the ear of the government? So who gets their attention? Who are they making policies for? Who gets what, when, and how, right? So, as you see in the picture here, there's giant protests, people participating in government, which is a good thing, right? So let's talk about the three theories of democratic participation. The first theory that we're going to cover is what we call elitism politics. This is where they say that the government is ruled by an identifiable group of persons who possess a disproportionate share of political power. So basically, they're saying like the political elite, like top military ranking officials, CEOs of big businesses, people that have a lot of money, all those people, they're extremely wealthy. So, when the framers set up the Constitution, like when we're going to get into chapter 2, did they, think about the Electoral College? It was set up in a way because the framers didn't trust the regular people in how they voted, so they didn't trust the popular vote. So, is that how politics works in America today still? Is it the fact that we're going to just allow the elite or the top people have the ear of the government and decide what issues are best for the country and how things should be done? So this elitism politics, again, it's CEOs, top military officials, people that are wealthy, high in society, celebrities even. Do they have the ear of the government? So, a lot of times people will say like this elitism politics is going to occur, when the issue is not clear and complex. So if it's very cloudy, or we don't really know how the people stand, something that's very, very, very controversial, like abortion. Are they making policies what's best for the people? Or are they making policies for a few select groups? This is like when we look at like narrow politics. Is this a very few individuals benefiting from this? Or is it very broad and a lot of people are benefiting? So again, who has the ear of the government? So that's why one way to look at elitism politics, right, is it's more of a very narrow sense of control. All right. So when we look at some of the theories that come out, of this. Karl Marx theory. He came out, he wrote the Communist Manifesto, as you can see the picture, and we all know about communism. Where we would have the lower class overthrow the upper class, and then would create this utopian society, and then everybody would do what was best for the state. Well, that upper class, was pushing people too much, and therefore, there was a violent overthrow. Right. So, American democracy's elites of the rich use their money to influence the system. Right. So, how do they do that? They do that through campaign contributions. C. Wright Mills was another person that fell under the power elite. He wrote this, and that's the book he wrote, and he kind of talks about the same things. Right? So democracy is dominated by influential members in society, composed by top military officials, media influencers, celebrities, business leaders. All these people have the ear of the government because of their power and influence. Right? So you can think about like a lot of things like what's going on with the NBA, how they are protesting games, not going to practice, to kind of help support the whole Black Lives Matter movement. So that's something to think about. Another theory behind this, bureaucratic theory, Max Weber, in his book, Economy and Society. So Mr. Weber said there's a bureaucratic theory, like those inside the government are elites, right? So non-elected workers for the government hold political power. And, what he means is people that work for the government. So that example is the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, the FBI, the CIA. Those are all like parts of the bureaucracy that, those are the people that hold a lot of the power in the government. So, because they're the ones that put the details on the laws, they implement the regulations for all the businesses and everything like that. So they're the ones with the power. So they are the power elite. All right, let's move on to our second theory. The second theory is what we call participatory democracy. This one was not in your guided reading. This was new. It's not a new concept. It's just new to AP government from when they redesigned the course a few years back. So participatory democracy, these are leaders that are constrained to follow the wishes of the people very closely. So when you think about participatory democracy being rule of the people, this is a very broad participation in government where most people, everyone should participate in government. So this is mass individual participation is going to lead to the wishes of the majority. So is this who's going to have the power of the government, the majority? Is that what's going to happen? So in order for participatory democracy, to happen, three things need to occur. One, it's got to apply when issues are simple and clear. Yes or no, true or false, right? So then everybody can vote. Yes, we want this. No, we don't want this. Okay. And then enough attention is given to interest most people. So, is it such a concern where it's going to impact a lot of people? And then lastly, it's a feasible way to address what the public wants to accomplish, right? So if we get everybody involved, the issue is cut and dry, and it is very interesting for most people to participate, then therefore, this is most likely when participatory democracy is going to occur. And then the third theory of our government, right, democratic participation is what we call pluralism. All right, so this is where there's no single elite has a monopoly on power, right? And we're going to read about that in Federalist Paper 10 towards the end of the chapter. But also, people organize into groups based on their interest. Right? We must compete for the influence and bargain and compromise while being responsive to the followers. So think about like when they say people organize into groups. A lot of times we can look at this as political parties. We can look at this as interest groups. So for example, like the National Rifle Association, which we call the NRA, people join that group to compete for influence, bargain and compromise to allow people to be able to own guns. There's another one like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They compete against, a lot of other women other groups that want to, bargain and compromise while being other things. So it's like, which one of these groups, There's a lot of groups, and they're all lobbying for all the issues in which they think is important. And so, like, these groups, as they are fighting, a lot of them have their hands in the government. So again, these groups can come into to specific issues, different regions of the country, different demographics, fighting for different things. So you got to look at it as this is many hands of government. Many hands have their choice in the government, and that's what's going to create that bargain, that compromise. So pluralism, plural meaning many groups, many people have ears or say in the government. So sometimes we look at pluralism can be good, but what if there's too many groups, right? So hyperpluralism is a sub-theory of government that comes off of pluralism, where basically it's going to say that there's too many groups vying for power, and therefore it's going to weaken the central government, right? Because, it's almost like, think about, your stack, you create a toothpick bridge and you put bricks on it. Only so many bricks are going to stay on it before that bridge breaks, right? So this is kind of the same concept. Only so many groups can have their hands in the government before it's going to weaken and collapse the government. So hyperpluralism, a sub-theory of government and politics contending that groups obtain so much strength that the government is merely a puppet, and the government just becomes weak. So group control controls policy at the expense of the wishes of the majority. So pretty self-explanatory. So I want you to think about some own examples of yourself. All right. So those are our 3 theories of political participation. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will talk to you guys later.